Hi, I'm Rashonda Cade. This is Reading with Rashonda, and we are reading Clotel by William Wells Brown. We're on chapter 25, Death is Freedom. I asked but freedom, and ye gave chains and the freedom of the grave, by Snelling. There are, in the District of Columbia, several slave prisons, or Negro pens as they are termed. These prisons are mostly occupied by persons to keep their slaves in when collecting their gangs together for the New Orleans market. Some of them belong to the government, and one in particular is noted for having been the place where a number of free colored persons have been incarcerated from time to time. In this district is situated the capital of the United States. Any free colored persons visiting Washington, if not provided with papers asserting and proving their right to be free, may be arrested and placed in one of these dens. If they succeed in showing that they are free, they are set at liberty, provided they are able to pay the expenses of their arrest and imprisonment. If they cannot pay these expenses, they are sold out. Okay, so you're free, you get arrested, you can prove that you're free, but you can't pay for the cost of having been arrested, so then you get sold into slavery. You cannot win for losing in this system. I'll continue. Through this unjust and oppressive law, many persons born in the free states have been consigned to a life of slavery on the cotton, sugar, or rice plantations of the southern states. By order of her master, Clotel was removed from Richmond and placed in one of these prisons to await the sailing of a vessel for New Orleans. The prison in which she was put stands midway between the Capitol at Washington and the President's house. Here the fugitive saw nothing but slaves brought in and taken out to be placed in ships and sent away to the same part of the country to which she herself would soon be compelled to go. She had seen or heard nothing of her daughter while in Richmond, and all hope of seeing her now had fled. If she was carried back to New Orleans, she could expect no mercy from her master. At the dusk of the evening previous to the day when she was to be sent off, as the old prison was being closed for the night, she suddenly darted past her keeper and ran for her life. It was not a great distance from the prison to the Long Bridge, which passes from the lower part of the city across the Potomac to the extensive forests and woodlands of the celebrated Arlington Place, occupied by that distinguished relative and descendant of the immortal Washington, Mr. George W. Curtis. Thither the poor fugitive directed her flight. So unexpected was her escape that she had quite a number of rods the start before the keeper had secured the other prisoners and rallied his assistants in pursuit. It was at an hour when, and in the part of the city where, horses could not be readily obtained for the chase. No bloodhounds were at hand to run down the flying woman, and for once it seemed as though there was to be a fair trial of speed and endurance between the slave and the slave catchers. The keeper and his forces raised the hue and cry on her pathway close behind, but so rapid was the flight along the wide avenue that the astonished citizens, as they poured forth from their dwellings to learn the cause of alarm, were only able to comprehend the nature of the case in time to fall in with the motley mass in pursuit, as many a one did that night, to raise an anxious prayer to heaven as they refused to join in the pursuit, that the panting fugitive might escape and the merciless soul dealer for once be disappointed of his prey. And now, with the speed of an arrow, having passed the avenue, with the distance between her and her pursuers constantly increasing, this poor hunted female gained the Long Bridge, as it is called, where interruption seemed improbable, and already did her heart begin to beat high with the hope of success. She had only to pass 3/4 of a mile across the bridge, and she could bury herself in a vast forest just at the time when the curtain of night would close around her and protect her from the pursuit of her enemies. But God by his providence had otherwise determined. He had determined that an appalling tragedy should be enacted that night, within plain sight of the President's house and the Capitol of the Union, which should be an evidence wherever it should be known of the unconquerable love of liberty the heart may inherit, as well as a fresh admonition to the slave dealer of the cruelty and enormity of his crimes. And this is particularly salient for Clotel, who, as we learned at the very beginning of the book, was Thomas Jefferson's daughter. So a president's daughter sold into slavery in front of the president's house and our nation's capital, trying to escape, but apparently it's not going to turn out too well. At least that's how it seems. Let's keep reading. Just as the pursuers crossed the high draw for the passage of sloops, soon after entering upon the bridge, they beheld 3 men slowly approaching from the Virginia side. They immediately called to them to arrest the fugitive, whom they proclaimed a runaway slave. True to their Virginian instincts, as she came near, they formed in line across the narrow bridge and prepared to seize her. Seeing escape impossible in that quarter, she stopped suddenly and turned upon her pursuers. On came the profane and ribald crew, faster than ever, already exulting in her capture and threatening punishment for her flight. For a moment, she looked wildly and anxiously around to see if there was no hope of escape. On either hand, far down below, rolled the deep foamy waters of the Potomac, and before and behind the rapidly approaching step and noisy voices of pursuers, showing how vain would be any further effort for freedom. Her resolution was taken. She clasped her hands convulsively and raised them, and she at the same time raised her eyes toward heaven and begged for that mercy and compassion there which had been denied her on earth. And then, with a single bound, she vaulted over the railings of the bridge and sunk forever beneath the waves of the river. Thus died Clotel, the daughter of Thomas Jefferson, a president of the United States, a man distinguished as the author of the Declaration of American Independence and one of the first statesmen of that country. Had Clotel escaped from oppression in any other land in the disguise in which she fled from the Mississippi to Richmond and reached the United States, no honor within the gift of the American people would have been too good to have been heaped upon the heroic woman. But she was a slave, and therefore out of the pale of their sympathy. They have tears to shed over Greece and Poland. They have an abundance of sympathy for poor Ireland. They can furnish a ship of war to convey the Hungarian refugees from a Turkish prison to the land of the free and the home of the brave. They boast that America is the cradle of liberty. If it is, I fear they have rocked the child to death. The body of Clotel was picked up from the bank of the river where it had been washed by the strong current, a hole dug in the sand, and there deposited without either inquest being held over it or religious service being performed. Such was the life and such the death of a woman whose virtues and goodness of heart would have done honor to one in a higher station of life, and who, if she had been born in any other land but that of slavery, would have been honored and loved. A few days after the death of Clotel, the following poem appeared in one of the newspapers. Now, rest for the wretched, the long day is past, and night on yon prison descendeth at last. Now lock up and bolt, ha, jailer, look there, who flies like a wild bird escaped from the snare. A woman, a slave, up out in pursuit, while lingers some gleams of day. Let thy call ring out, now a rabble rout is at thy heels, speed away. A bold race for freedom, on, fugitive, on. Heaven help but the right, and thy freedom is won. How eager she drinks the free air of the plains. Every limb, every nerve, every fiber she strains. From Columbia's glorious capital, Columbia's daughter flees to the sanctuary God has given, to the sheltering forest trees. Now she treads the long bridge, joy lighteth her eye. Beyond her the dense wood and darkening sky. Wild hopes thrill her heart as she neareth the shore. O despair, there are men fast advancing before. Shame, shame on their manhood, they hear, they heed the cry, her flight to stay. And like demon forms with their outstretched arms, they wait to seize their prey. She pauses, she turns, ah, will she flee back? Like wolves her pursuers howl loud on their track. She lifteth to heaven one look of despair. Her anguish breaks forth in one hurried prayer. Hark! Her jailers yell like a bloodhound's bay. On the low night wind it sweeps. Now, death or the chain, to the stream she turns, and she leaps. Oh God, she leaps. The dark and the cold, yet merciful wave receives to its bosom the form of the slave. She rises. Earth's scenes on her dim vision gleam, yet she struggleth not with the strong rushing stream. And lo, where the death cries her woman's heart gives, as she floats adown the river, faint and more faint grows the drowning voice, and her cries have ceased forever. Now back, jailer, back to thy dungeons again, to swing the red lash and rivet the chain. The form thou wouldst fetter, return to its God. The universe holdeth no realm of night, more drear than her slavery, more merciless fiends than here stayed her flight. Joy, the hunted slave is free. That bondwoman's corse, let Potomac's proud wave go bear it along by our Washington's grave, and heave it high up on that hallowed strand to tell of the freedom he won for our land. A weak woman's corse by freemen chased down, hurrah for our country, hurrah. To freedom she leaped, though through drowning and death, hurrah for our country, hurrah. That's quite an indictment on our country, that the only way so many of its citizens can find freedom is through death. So that was chapter 25 of Clotel, and we'll just rest in that for a moment. I'm Rashonda Cade. This is Reading with Rashonda.